There was a day when the sky turned dark in the middle of the afternoon. The sun refused its light, as if creation itself could not bear to watch. Thunder rolled like distant judgment, and the wind carried the scent of blood and myrrh across the hill. There was a moment when hope looked defeated, when love was nailed to wood, and when heaven seemed silent. The mocking laughter of soldiers mixed with the sobs of women. The same hands that once broke bread for thousands were now stretched wide, pierced and bleeding. The voice that once said, "Peace, be still," now whispered, "Father, forgive them." The one who healed the blind was beaten until his own eyes swelled shut. The one who calmed storms was mocked by the very wind that once obeyed him. The one who raised the dead was lifted up to die between two thieves. The one who walked on water could not step down from the cross. The one who called Lazarus forth now hung silent while the world declared him finished. The crowds that once shouted Hosanna now jeered, "Come down and save yourself." The disciples who swore they would never leave had scattered like sheep without a shepherd. Even the sun hid its face, and the earth groaned and split open, as if the ground itself was trying to swallow the grief. And the world thought, "This is the end. The dream is dead. The light has gone out. Love is lost." Yet in that darkest hour, when every promise seemed broken, and every miracle forgotten, something eternal was unfolding, something the grave could never hold, because what looked like defeat was actually the greatest victory ever won. What sounded like silence was heaven holding its breath, waiting for Sunday. But what looked like defeat was divine design. Long before the hammer fell, long before the thorns were twisted, the prophet Isaiah had already whispered it. Across the centuries like a sacred secret, he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed. Isaiah 53:5. This was not weakness. This was the strongest act of love the universe had ever witnessed. This was not failure. This was the flawless plan of a sovereign God, written in blood before the foundation of the world. The nails did not hold him there. Roman iron had no power over the Son of God. Love held him there. Love so fierce it refused to come down. Love so pure it chose the curse. Love so deep it carried every sin you've ever hidden, and every shame you've ever carried. And when the sky had gone black, and the final breath was near, he lifted his voice and cried out with triumph, "It is finished." John 19:30. He was not saying, "I am finished." He was not admitting defeat. He was declaring the greatest transaction in history. The debt is finished. The price is paid in full. The veil is torn. The wrath is satisfied. The enemy is disarmed. Your shame paid in full. Your sin covered completely. Your condemnation canceled forever. Your chains broken. Your future secured. The cross was not a tragedy. It was a transaction, a divine exchange. His righteousness for our guilt, his life for our death, his victory for our freedom. And in that moment, hell trembled, heaven rejoiced, and the Father smiled, because the blood of the Lamb had just purchased eternity for every soul who would believe. What looked like the end was only the beginning. Sunday was coming. They wrapped him in linen, white and clean, like the innocence he never lost. Spices of myrrh and aloes filled the air, a fragrance meant for kings, now poured out over the body of the King of Kings. They laid him in a borrowed tomb, a rich man's cave, a stranger's resting place, for the one who owned the stars. They rolled a stone across the entrance, a massive wheel of rock that sealed the darkness in. Soldiers stood guard, the disciples hid. The women wept from a distance, and silence fell. Heavy. Holy. Unbreakable. Saturday came. No miracles. No sermons. No signs in the sky. No voice from heaven. No angels singing. Just silence, the kind of silence that presses on your chest until you wonder if God has forgotten how to speak. Have you ever lived in a Saturday? That long, aching space between "it is finished" and the "he is risen"? Between the promise God whispered to your heart and the breakthrough you're still waiting for? Between the prayer you prayed in tears and the testimony you're desperate to share? Between the diagnosis and the healing? Between the broken marriage and the restoration? Between the empty crib and the miracle baby? Between the job loss and the open door? Saturday is where faith is tested, where doubt whispers loudest, where hope feels buried 6 feet under, where every voice around you says, "It's over. Move on, he's gone." But here is what they didn't know, what the soldiers didn't know, what the Pharisees didn't know, what even his closest friends didn't know. God works in silence. He is never more active than when everything looks still. While the world slept, heaven was planning the greatest comeback in history. While the stone sat cold and heavy, the Spirit of God was breathing resurrection power into those lifeless bones. While the disciples mourned, the Father was counting the hours until dawn would break the dark. The silence was not absence, it was preparation. The silence was not rejection. It was the calm before the cosmos shook. They thought Saturday was the end, but Saturday was only the setup, because Sunday was coming. And when it arrived, silence would be shattered forever. On the third day, before the sun had fully risen, before the dew had dried on the grass, before the women even reached the garden, the earth shook. Not a gentle tremor, a violent, heaven-sent quake that rattled the bones of sleeping soldiers and sent the stone thundering aside like a child's toy. The stone moved, not so Jesus could get out. He was already gone. The King of Glory needed no door. The stone rolled away, so the world could look in and see for itself. The tomb was empty. The linen cloths lay there, neatly folded, as if the one who had worn them had simply stepped out of death, like a man stepping out of yesterday's clothes. Death had been defeated. The grave had lost its grip. Hell had lost its victory. The keys of Hades were now in nail-scarred hands. And then the angel appeared, radiant as lightning, clothes white as snow, sitting on the stone like a conqueror on a throne. He looked at the trembling women and said with a smile that shook the universe, "He is not here. He has risen, just as he said." Matthew 28:6. Come and see the place where he lay. The same hands that were pierced now held the keys of death and of life. The same feet that walked the Via Dolorosa now stood victorious on the neck of the enemy. The same voice that cried, "It is finished," now whispered to Mary, Mary, and the sound of her name broke the power of grief forever. The cross was not the end of the story. It was the doorway to resurrection. The blood was not wasted. It was the down payment on eternity. And because he walked out of that tomb, your grave is not the final address. Your darkest Saturday has an expiration date. Your impossible situation has already been answered with an empty tomb. On the third day, everything changed. The women ran with fear and great joy. The disciples would soon see. The world would never be the same. Because he lives, you can face tomorrow. Because he lives, your story is not over. Because he lives, death has no more sting. Sunday has come, and it is still coming, for every heart that dares to believe. He is risen. He is risen indeed. This was not just an event in history. It was a declaration for your future. A loud, living, unbreakable promise, written in an empty tomb, and sealed by the breath of God himself. Because if the grave couldn't hold him, if stone and seal and soldier couldn't keep the king inside, then fear cannot hold you. Not the fear that wakes you at 3 a.m., not the fear that whispers you'll never be enough, not the fear that says your story is already over. If death couldn't defeat him, if the last enemy was disarmed by a man who refused to stay dead, then your past cannot define you. Not the addiction, not the divorce papers, not the failure that still stings when no one's watching, not the shame that follows you like a shadow. The blood of Jesus is louder than every mistake you've ever made. And here's the promise that turns every Saturday into Sunday morning. The same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead lives in you. Romans 8:11. The same Spirit. Not a smaller version. Not a weaker measure. Not a Sunday school version for good Christians only. The same resurrection power that shattered the stone, that exploded the darkness, that made the dead man walk out wearing grave clothes like yesterday's laundry. That power lives in you, right now. In your weary bones, in your anxious mind. In the middle of your mess. That means your depression does not get the final word. Your anxiety does not get the final word. Your mistakes do not get the final word. Your diagnosis does not get the final word. Your loneliness does not get the final word. Your addiction does not get the final word. Your broken family does not get the final word. Your financial ruin does not get the final word. Resurrection gets the final word. And resurrection is not coming someday. Resurrection is alive in you today. So stand up, breathe deep. The same power that emptied the tomb is still emptying graves, one surrendered heart at a time. Because He lives, you are not stuck. Because He lives, your story is still being written. Because He lives, nothing in your life is beyond the reach of resurrection power. He is risen. And because He is risen, so are you. Now go live like it. Maybe you feel buried beneath layers of disappointment, so heavy you can barely breathe. Buried in the rubble of dreams that didn't survive the year. Buried in regret that replays like a broken record every time the room gets quiet. Buried in waiting for the phone call, the healing, the second chance, the open door that never seems to come. You feel 6 feet under hope, like the stone has been rolled over your heart and sealed with finality. But Easter reminds us, with every sunrise that dares to break the dark, stones move, not by human strength, but by the command of the one who once said, "Roll the stone away." Graves open, not by accident, but by the power that once shattered death itself. Hope rises, not as a fragile wish, but as a living, breathing, unstoppable force. The stone in front of your future is not permanent. It may look immovable today, that diagnosis, that debt, that broken relationship, that closed chapter you can't rewrite, but the same hand that rolled away the rock of history is already at work on the rock in front of you. The silence in your life is not abandonment. It is the holy hush of Saturday before the explosion of Sunday. God is not distant in the quiet. He is working in the quiet, breathing resurrection into places you've already labeled dead. Sunday is coming, not someday in some far-off eternity, but for you right here, right now. Sunday is coming for your marriage. Sunday is coming for your child. Sunday is coming for your weary soul. Sunday is coming for every buried dream and every sealed-off grave you've been mourning. So lift your head. The stone is already trembling. The ground is already shaking. The grave clothes are about to fall off. Because Easter isn't just a story. It's your story. And Sunday, glorious, unstoppable, life-changing Sunday, is coming for you. He is risen. And so are you. The cross proves you are loved. Not with words. Not with wishes, but with blood. With nails. With a crown of thorns pressed into the forehead of God. The cross is heaven's loudest "I love you," shouted into the face of your deepest shame. You are not forgotten. You are not forsaken. You are fiercely, furiously, forever loved. The tomb proves you are free. The stone is gone. The grave clothes are folded. The chains that once rattled in your soul lie shattered on the floor of an empty cave. No power of hell, no chain of addiction, no grip of guilt, no label the world tried to stick on you can hold you anymore. The tomb declares, your past is dead, your freedom is alive, and the resurrection proves this is not the end of your story. Your chapter of pain is not the final page. Your season of silence is not the closing line. The author of life has already written the next line. In bright resurrection ink, to be continued, in glory. He is risen. And because He lives, you can rise too. Rise from the ashes of failure. Rise from the grave of regret. Rise from the pit of "I can't anymore." Rise from every lie that told you were too broken, too far gone, too late. Happy Easter. This is the victory that changed everything. The cross won your heart. The tomb won your freedom. The resurrection won your future. So go tell somebody. Go live like the stone has already been rolled away. Go love like the grave has no more power. Go shine like Sunday morning is burning in your bones. He is risen indeed. And so, beloved, so are you. Winful Chronicles. He is risen. This is not the end. This is only the beginning. Happy Easter. Now go live the resurrection.